Níos, a dúmil. Well, sinad maha jónsich me skol. Na jóns me and harogin nuors na fein gan hwt a higher school. Harwagan ach primary school. Haros ni fein chance ha chlawn new fein idir. Haros in dul shacham primary. Och, was ni bloon 3 crow. Was ni hais bar is banje gejoer kan haros ni fein nuors na manje iririk. Ach hanjel uit de bloon bo as an out new. Ach was je bloon trees was in jenne genheim singeriem sin hul dat kaas so hul dat a genheim chever hockey. Sing honey was kein looms kus na gaas in jo shen skun skushen guber. Gen rosenschen va keurig again. Svanjor mer haisait der raschenik so hul dat. Was je maar hebben keuren, was je niet in een fjol gaan. Scharoïs kan je zo'n beelger of koken gaan. Wat beelger je hoor kan je anders zo. Achen is je, heb bouwmachine bij je maatil. Van Russians kleef ook, dan misschien in Russians. Achen Russian Russians, wij kerken aken, zwa een gehoor aken. Zwa hoe dat machine aken, tever hockey. Tjever een aagogok voor jirk. Habitu se bio, habitu was een hier, tjever hier gogok. Haro schenkeljori schon hier gogok. You weren't old enough for the First World War. My husband was through the whole war. He came, and he got warming Canada's, and he got no Kudish Canadians. Zwaar zo'n rijke schon keert voor je. Schaila in ten Suilven ik as rijk. Hoe eerste huis waar gachur haro fete schon gok gachur no van Canada is een jongsak in Zuider Nille. Per sheshin de burga jaar per Gaia hoel. To train other soldiers, you know, for the war that were coming over after him. He lost Gaia hoel the Battle of the Somme.
Was that so?
And the sight, of course, it affected his hearing all his life. And this side of his face was the left eye. Who's the end now? Agus a chóisige, boer, big an boer. Der gaan húle horas, kan ter 4 is a chóisige. Agus kleine kianalit, der gaan heel gan húlige. Agus gainig a djús, begen a djús, débja. Ha me koma sés a Danish uram, me chúrisú as a chreinig, me skúris an chreinig. So gaid an húlas, Chwraid sŵl glanhawn. Schananau dwi'n ach yn hwylig i hyn fawn. Fan y gach o cofach i cheile, hwyr a mad siwmawsach na. Swaigr i gwbl gwbrean hwylig cawn gan a 3 fionach yn ysgon sŵl i lain. Ha ian a gadach gran i fionach yn. Agus fag at fyrras o hwyl hyich, per yn hwylas, befalsau, to get out every night, see when he went to bed, and put it in again in the morning. And there was one Bhain who were Croagin. So she started to me, so me was a 3 birthday show. Schaische nach Kylesku to tie them in their stalls. And we had one with big horns. We had a red cow, boruag, le ergenoi. Agus hoga chaun, gun keine horglone hergen bo, agus an chanerig den húlige. Agus ha kam genug in húle van irrigation. But he had the presence of mind. chur éireas an húil zúist. Sannig a misna me híon a seo, sannig a gusandoras os is té hannig a manis, wat gemór mi nó, al big blind. Os mi stór a hachar gut, sníir a gomr a hachar gas chur mi wat díos chláma kom stái. Chur mér fabal right away gus har o telefon as anna seo núr nas na tahin. Hanne taihas a varas nach el telefon iniu, mach agus har o telefon ag an núor sin, ach gus ich hios gúrdig fast office. Wel ha sin cúb a seo, chur mi níos chláin góna gan óchtar. Wel van óchtar van a bochan in over an 4 minút, ha du gait in a van. So ga chur a blind na húlige, gus a chaike gatad, gus an sols a chumar gé, chur a pilbig an húlige. Sva morsune an 3 mána hei na chaike gatad, completely blind. Wel va morsune chadís na bear, sva met baviska. Ach harwa met var ein, var na húr, a joiner. And, you know, he couldn't see a thing straight when he had only the one good eye. Hanaki gat dírach, roie. Eis na mi gat a cúpa tí. Can as a tí. Ha chud gan hé dírach yn a chúp, je gan hé mach cúb as a chúp. Ha chud gan hé am dírach. Sva morshin as a hula has tan ik retired a kaisi gan hai. Scharo tank na duas gash on tada reina. He was never thanked for anything he did. And the people of today, they get employment, how to find employment, social security. Fian you go to the goober. Hanai mishikina need that go. Side on the show, grania more find social security. Schagianat unbouwber go. Sulu Melchin Karst. They're on social security quite a lot in this place, and they won't do a hand's turn for me. They won't give me a day's work. But was an hospital an Yvernish. Agus van a húl cho colach I chéle. Snach ro fisach nach ein húlige héne wike. Gus nu genoke dar, waar examenike gechaunike, hoe chaile malansike. Swaag genoke dar ik examenike gechaunike. Sjinsha ga man húl, wel skaunach jede genoke dar, gereniering wike. Ga hier in een nosje gaan húlach, vaakje gat. Ho colach se van a húli chéle. Mulutukshin shin. Are you understanding that?
You were saying that your father went to the fishing in Wick, Mrs.
Yes,
MacLeod.
yes. Right is ook kusin years gacha show the week. Is va baat the moor ake. Ik moet er wel Cahirn na hoog naar as wel clubbing together. Do kujak so find baat the moor. We got shunait the livelihood of hinat rot wat bio na yana gat get in years kwat an hauri. Agus he got yache de stugger the he jup tea de buin in araber sletchin vatichin gachi. Schon araber sultat. By eerst rote laun hachit me nach an ander week wa kujak for sin hanne gat of this drilling, some drilling gewaard. You know, drilling for the services if there was a war on. But my father was too old, of course, for the war. So the African war, I remember it fine. And he was there then. I remember my mother being afraid that she'd be called up, you see, because he was in this what they called, drill back, drill. And I walked from here 2 weeks to drill. And there was no bus or anything, you know. And there was one man in Clachtol, dunne, as a chwachi, as Shevaka vaka Yishagons. As va Kieran Maher Downs, dancing. He was noted for dancing. And they went away to drill then, himself and another few, early in the early hours of the morning. And when they reached Eagle, Eagle Hotel, there was a wedding going on there. And of course the wedding was over by the time they got there, but the dancing was still going on. And this man danced until he was just nearly dropped after walking from Clachtol to Eagle. Could you believe that?
No.
And they walked from Eagle that night to Wick, and got to Wick. And it's his own son that told me that more than once.
Amazing.
Amazing, yes. His son is dead now. That's of course a long time ago, but it happened. There were no cars. When I was young myself, there was only 1 or 2 cars in the whole place.
And the whole of the
The whole of the, yes, there were only the fellow that had the first car here, he just happened to drop dead there 2 weeks ago, excuse me. And he was the first fellow that got, there was a camp, Tever a Hogg Fraoich, that camp, field camp, how tuile chronkan sin as a rafen, how was a rafen. Agus who a begaragit wat je gooberaan, when een jakamus gooberaan, she Bishop wat Jana Clerk Works, waum. Agus rein níle was sure rein at begaragit waum genu a car. Agus var eerst heilig, she ben schosten shita I said. Agus var een chari lassen ra, chinait na waum, die leine shi Hogg Fraoich. Han ik gereest geen hooligan fijn car. Ze malle haar zo nu has ze wel mis Culkein. Had daar haar als ik gehoele taai houden, maar geen taai. Ska jou gaan hij me geen heiliges mee, wenn je was naar uit ze bij. Hij to mij hij zei hij laat ik hier rekent. Hij to mij zeg. Hij geen het favor hoeft maar je geen gasse. As Lochin no Giacomus, they'll not do a favour for you. But one fellow in the village that will do a favour for me, and he hasn't got a car. His licence was taken off him a few weeks ago, but he was happened to have a drink, and that was it.
Tell me, Mrs. MacLeod, did your father mention to you, or did you hear ever of any legends connected with the old man of Stoer?
No, I never heard anything about him but the old man. But that he was there since people remember.
And what do the people call the old man in Gaelic?
Stoer, the Stoer Rock they call it. But the old man, because he's shaped as like a man as could be. So that's how he's called, the old man.
I see.
But the proper thing is Stoer.
Stoer.
The Stoer Rock.
And you'll have heard of the Assynt light.
Yeah. What?
Have you ever seen this light that supposedly is said to appear over by Alderney?
Yes, I've seen it myself here, yes, several times, yes. And it's always before a storm you see it. But I haven't seen it for years, but I used to see it several times. Yes. When I got in great heat van de huis, begin bril machen. Ach, I spelen boor when I ga is. Ach, was daar moe was, ach, ik in jullie jammer voor jurk. Ach, I is haar om ik kon het constant leren hon. Ach, had de hagen ook van Ach, I saw the on the Scourie. Row on the Scourie row. You weren't in Scourie. Well, there's another light that I see from here in Scourie before a storm. And I can be as sure of it if I see it, that there'll be a storm following. A light, and if I stand in the door and look at it, it'll go out sometimes, but other times I can stand long enough and still the light is there.
Is there any shape to the light?
No, I can't say, but just you would think it was a house light.
Is that so?
He'll look at us all time. I can't all time, will I not get us all time, so. You wouldn't see a house light in Scourie from here. No.
Can you recall any of these ghosts that used to come here?
Well, there was one, a huge black dog
Was it?
at Craigin. That's beyond Clachtull a bit, about 2 miles beyond Clachtull. There's a big black rock there. And some people used to see a big black dog there. And he was fierce, and they used to be afraid of him, men coming home late at night, Big fikkelwakker on a hue. Agus rinne Master Scollawag on the show. Hughela one granjachkan, unfortunately, because he would be the man to give you a lot of things. He made a song or a poem about this black dog of Loch Cul. And he was supposed to be coming along there one night himself, And he was very, very frightened, that you would see the dog. But at the same time, he didn't believe there was such a thing. But he didn't come very far when the dog appeared. And the dog came after him. And he ran after the dog, and the dog ran up the hills, and he ran after the dog and caught the dog by the tail and swung him round, and killed him, or next to killed him, and got rid of him like that.
Are you remembering this story from something that you heard, or was it something that you'd read?
No, I heard it often and often, yes, and to this very day.
Did your father mention it to you?
Well, I didn't hear my father really, but a lot of people mention it, and still mention it. It's still known, you see, the black dog of Loch Cul. And whether there was anything there or not, we can't, be very sure. But
did you ever hear of the water horse?
Yeah, yes. Where now? I think it was in a Loch Cul that the water horse was seen.
Was that so?
I think so. There's a loch there with a lot of lilies and things in it. Yes. Well, I think that's the place where the horse was seen. Other people, used to come. They used to walk all the time. Then there were no other conveyance, and they used to see, perhaps they would have a drink or two, and they used to see funerals and things like that, meeting them when there was no funeral there or anything. And they used to see strange people, on the road before them and after them.
Did you ever hear of any way you could avoid seeing a funeral?
No, there was no way of avoiding it when you saw it, when you were on the road at, say, 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, or say 11 o'clock at night or that. If you met a funeral, you couldn't avoid it, meeting it and going right through it. And some people would know some of the people that were at the funeral. They walked the funerals then from here to Stoer, to the cemetery. And so that when they would meet the funeral, they would know some of the people. And there would soon be a funeral in that family, after them seeing that. There was another ghost seen at the loch at the schoolhouse. Did the nurse let you see the schoolhouse?
Yes.
Well, at the burn, there's a burn running down to MacLeod from the loch that's at the school. And there was a man in MacLeod and he saw something, but he never told anybody what he saw. But he would never come past that bridge alone at night. He would never cross that place at night. There was a house a bit from him that he used to go to Kylesku to, but he would never go alone. Somebody would have to go with him, with something he saw, but he refused ever to tell anybody what he saw, whatever it was. So I'm thinking, that it's all this that's come into the place, incomer and putting up houses and all that. I'm thinking that's the thing if they were seeing anything, I don't know.
But the burn coming down from the schoolhouse, what's the Gaelic name for it?
Caskuk,
Which means?
Which means, stop in the water. Stop in the water. See, the water is flowing from the loch and making a burn right down to Barchradich. And Caskuk means stopping it. Stop in the water. So they call it the Caskuk when we're at the Caskuk on the way down to Barchradich. The house would be full of Kaylis, Today there's not such a thing. The people would gather, in one house. There were certain houses that gathered in more than another. And we wouldn't go to bed with the fright of our lives with all the tales they used to tell, about ghosts and that. They used to tell such tales that we'd be afraid as little children to go to bed. Mm-hmm. But now there's nothing of that today. Nothing.
And was the water horse frequently mentioned?
Yes. And there was a girl drowned. She ran from the school. The school was then, I don't suppose you noticed, on your left, coming up Stoer Bray, a kind of a lodge place. It's white. It's on the one side of the road from the cemetery. And that was an old school. And the children from Barchradich and all over went to that school. And it was frosty, the weather. And this girl ran as hard as she could out of the school at playtime and ran on to the ice to slide, and down she went. And the ice broke under her and she was drowned in that loch.
And what do you call that loch?
Lochinver, I don't know what that means.
Where the lilies are.
Where the lilies are. And the rushes, there's a lot of rushes and lilies. Mm.
Hear the birds outside.
Yes, I'm tired of it. And the cuckoo, she's never stopped, never stopped.
And you get blasted here in the winter by the gales.
Be quiet. They left me, but that was about all. They left me just. And I'm so exposed, and it doesn't matter what wind, except the south is not so bad on me. It's on the other end of the house, but it's not so bad on this end. But the east, north and west, I get terrible. The north wind and the east wind is terrible here.
This is Eagle Cottage?
Eagle Cottage, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And everybody knows Eagle Cottage, so everybody knows it. It's a house that people used to come to quite a lot,
Is that so?
Yes.
This is the last house in?
Yes, the last
Culkein.
house, yes. Mm-hmm. But since I've been left alone, you see, I have a daughter in Drumbeck.
Did you ever hear your mother mention about dyes, Mrs. MacLeod? Dyes for...
Yes, and I've seen them myself.
Okay.
Yes, I've seen the dyes. They took, that thing that grows on stones? Mm-hmm. Well, they picked that and made dye of that. I don't know how. Did they boil it? I think they did boil it and put some stuff among it, and it made a perfect dye, better than the dyes. It wouldn't cast like the dyes you get today. It would lie in a pot for a few days, and then they would of course use it after that. And it was pots we had, not pans or anything like that. And there wasn't such a thing as this, a cooker. It was open fireplaces we had, and burnt peat. But there's no peat now to be got. The peats are finished.
Can you remember the chain coming down?
Yes, I remember that fine.
What was that called in the Gaelic?
Slowry. slowly, and the kettle would be put on that and the pot, and that's where we cooked.
And how about the spike? What was the Gaelic name for that?
The spike, wonder what was that?
The hook for hooking the kettle?
Slowly, that's also slowly where we
Yes.
put the kettle and the pot. There was a hook at the end of it, you see, that would take the pot and the kettle and put it on there, then it would...
But the hook didn't have a separate name?
No, just the slowly we called it.
And what type of plough did your father use?
Just an ordinary plain plough. Well, they would put, it would do with one horse, and we would have two horses in it sometimes, and ploughed the whole fields for that, which took a long time before you would plough a big... We had two big crofts, two big crofts, and by the time we would be finished, it would be, say, June, by the time the rest of the potatoes would be put down, and turnip and that. And then they had another thing, a thing they called Cahirn.
A hand plough?
Yeah, well, you did it, you had a hold of it, and you did it with your foot. You put your foot on it. Yes. You heard about that?
I saw one recently.
Did you?
A
Oh,
man had it in his outhouse.
oh yes, for sure, likely.
Just, it was old and
Yes,
he brought
yes.
it out to show.
Well, I remember planting potatoes with my father with that. And of course, they had a spade as well, and a grape, and all the cow's manure, was put out first and spread on the ground for the potatoes and for the corn. And they would be putting that out with a horse and cart. It would be the cow's manure all winter would be put in one heap, and then in the spring, earlier than this a bit, they would put it on the ground with a horse and cart. They would take it to the ground, the horse and cart, and we would have to spread it. I was doing that myself with a grape, spreading it, and my father was very particular. Every bit of it would have to be just as small as meal, as ground as meal, You couldn't leave a big lump, about.
Did you ever use the seaweed?
Yes, we used that too. And say, when there's a high tide, say in March, there's a high tide when the moon comes. Well, when that high tide came in, it brought a whole lot of seaweed along with it, and the seaweed lay on the sand until the people would go and gather it and take it away to the crofts and plant potatoes with it and corn and all that.
And can you recall the ponies being used, the pack horse being used to gather the peats or the seaweed?
Oh yes, that's what gathered it up to the crofts, you see. The sea was down away from the crofts, were up, say, on the top of the village there. And they used to take the seaweed and the manure and everything up there with a horse and cart. But there was one day set aside in March, say, when the sea came full in, when there was a... Then the sea would come in and bring all that seaweed with it. And it would be north wind was the best for bringing it in, for bringing the seaweed in. And then the sea would go out and leave all that seaweed on the sand, and that's the seaweed. Unless it was taken off, it would rot, and I even get the smell of the rotten seaweed up here, besides the sea, besides being down at the sea. And the whole village used to gather, and cut it off the rocks when the sea would be out. And we used to have a set day for the whole village to go down and gather it. And we would have what they call corrants, a hook, a crook, a thing, that you cut it had a handle and an iron, a sharp iron. And we used to cut the seaweed off the stones with that.
And this was called?
Corran. Corran. That was the first thing they had before the scythe came in. Then the scythe came in. And then, of course, today it's all tractors. There's not such a thing as a scythe to be seen or to be got.
And how was the pack horse laden? Was a blanket on his back? Or?
No, there was the cart, you see, was tied onto the horse. The harness was on the horse, and the cart tied onto the harness. And the horse had pulled the cart, you see, up to wherever it was going. Then there were no shops like what there are today. All the goods came by steamer to Lochinver from Glasgow. And the steamer took a week between Glasgow and Lochinver. It called at Oban. And all these small places, you see. And it took all the groceries and meal and things, lime and things like that. The people needed salt, coarse salt. That's what we all used then on fish, you know, when there was fish caught and salted for the winter. It was the coarse salt that was used, not the fine salt we have nowadays. I see in a book that I'm reading about that place, that place over at Lewis. What's the name of it now? They go and get these birds. What do you call the birds now? And there's a whole lot of men go for a week to the rocks, and these birds stay on the rocks. They nest on the rocks, and the men get them, shoot them, and get them. And when they get a boat full, they take them home, and they dress them, and they salt them for the winter. And that's the food they have. What's the name of that place now? It's an island.
Did you recall the Tinkers coming around here?
Yes, oh yes, they were great friends of mine. I liked the Tinkers, liked them very much. And they would be awfully nice to me, and I would be nice to them, you know. And when the children were wee, I had 6 of a family, but I lost my oldest son. He died of cancer some years ago in England. And when the children were wee and my husband was here, and I took boarders on, you know, and these Tinker girls would do a washing for me and an ironing and all that. And we were great friends, but today there's not one of them come the way.
Were these Stuarts?
Yes, Stuarts. Some of them were Stuarts, some of them were Williamsons. And they used to camp in tents at the schoolhouse there. And they used to come round with their horse and cart, and they used to make tin pails and tin jugs and all that kind of stuff. And some of them would be selling clothes, old clothes, you see, and that. And I used to be very nice to them. They were very nice to me. They were great friends of mine, and I miss them an awful lot because I would welcome them in any time they would come. They would stay for a while, an hour or two with me, you see. And when my children were wee, they would make many a turn for me. And my husband would be away working. They were going from here over to the other side, to Lady Mary's territory, to plant trees. And there was a lorry took the men from here over to Kylesku, and they crossed the ferry there and went to Lady Mary's forestry there and planted trees there. And my husband was there with them. And they used to plant the trees there. And on stormy days, I would be that worried, you know, for the ferry, crossing the ferry. But now they're making a bridge on that ferry, on the Kylesku, so that the ferry boat will, through time, will be put off altogether.
So the Tinkers helped with the planting of the trees?
Yes.
Do you recall the packman that used to come round?
Yes, I recall them too, yes. They used to be Well, of course, they would just come in and sit for a while and that. But they used to have lovely things. It would be shoes. They were shoes, more or less. And they used to gold stuff. They would have, watches and clocks and rings and things like that. And I remember when I was a child, I used to envy, and wish that I would get it. But we were so poor then, you see, we couldn't buy anything but the necessary things. But today, you see, they buy anything they like, people.
And did the packmen have a case?
Yes, yes, they had a case, yes. And they stayed, there was one packman years ago, before my time. He was going about in Drumbeg and that, and he camped down somewhere round about Drumbeg, and he was killed through the night and his money stolen. You see, they would have a lot of money, these men. They were rich, well-off money and well-dressed and all that. But that was before, I remember.
And did you have visits from the tramps that used to go around?
Oh, well, we never had many tramps here up here at all, no.
Slightly off the
Aye, we're off the beaten track, yes. Indeed, I don't think there's so many of them on the road anyway now as what there used to be.
That's true. Very true. What, or should I say, where was the part you used to get your peats from?
Oh, away up here, beyond the hills up here. A long way, say, easy 2 miles from here.
And what was that peat ground called in the Gaelic? Or the place where the peats were taken from?
Rue. R-H-U, Rue. The peats were taken from Rue. But now you see, there were so many taken and so many, of course there's not so many people now in the place anyway to use peat. But the peats are finished now, the ground is. And when they would be cutting the peats, they used to get barks of trees in the ground, which told you that there used to be trees in this place, you see, of what's so bare today as it is. If there weren't, the barks of the trees wouldn't be there. But there must have been trees growing there years ago, because when they were cutting them, they would get the bark of the tree, you see, coming up.
What do you call, in the Gaelic, the point down there?
Dunan.
And is there a name for the cliffs along to the point of Stoer? The high cliffs that are 300 feet high?
Well, there's no name that I ever heard about the rocks, but there's a split rock there.
Is there?
You could see it from the nurse's house.
I think I saw a tunnel-like rock when I came through, and you can see the ocean through it.
Yes, you can see, yes, you can see it from Stoer, but not from here. Well, that's called the split rock. Skult, that's split.
The one down here?
No, the one down at Stoer, at Cahirn.
But what do you call the rock that has a hole in it here, down at the sea?
Oh, well, I don't know what you call that. I never heard of that. But we just call either Shageojarag, terrible cliffs that you never seen the like of them. And we'll use an awful lot of sheep going over the cliffs, That's Geojarag. The red cave, see, the red cave. And there were people staying in that years and years and years ago, because you can go into it yet, I'm told. I was never in it. You can walk into it. But of course you would have to watch that the sea wouldn't come, and you'd be imprisoned there. But there is such a place at Dunan there, at the next house over there.
Further along, just down?
Yes, but there's nobody in that house just now. They're the 2 brothers and they're both working. And they call that Dunan, and they call it Dune. That's a heap of rocks put together, Dune. I think that's what they call the rocks at Stoer, Dune. but it's doing on the Colbus.
And when would this family be occupying the cave?
Oh, years and years and years ago. Years and years ago when there was no civilization, I don't suppose.
When you were a girl, can you recall the type of vessels that used to pass?
Yes, we used to see the Britannia passing.
Did you?
Yes, passing out here on its way to Balmoral and Burkall and these places. Yes, yes.
Can you recall any ships that have come to grief in this part of the world?
Oh yes, there were 3 or 4 in the last few years went on the rocks here at the back of the house here,
But
at the back of the hill.
Going back a number of years to when you were young, can you recall them?
Not when I was very young. There weren't so much fishing in the place as there is now. Lochinver now is a great fishing place. So there's boats from Kylesku coming to Lochinver and boats from Lochinver going to Kylesku. And this boat was heading one morning, early in the morning, there was fog. And this boat was heading to Liverpool to get the market, the first market at Liverpool, that would get rid of its heading. She'd get the first price. So similarly, well, what we're thinking is that whoever was steering the ship fell asleep because they knew the way well. It wasn't the first time, and they knew their way so well between here and Liverpool. And the ship went on to the rocks, and all the cargo, but they had a whole ship full of herring, and their bedding and everything was lost, and the men, there was 1 man lost. There's 4 men that were in it. Well, there were 3 of them climbed the rocks, barefooted. They lost all their belongings. They climbed the rocks barefooted and came to the houses here, you see, to tell what happened and to get food and shelter. So it was, everybody heard about it, you know. It was rumoured around, you see, that the thing happened and that the ship went on the rocks and a whole lot of herring there and nets and things. So they came down, every man in Lochinver was down here for the day. And, you know, trying to help and do as much as they can and to see if they would get this body, the body of the man that was drowned. But he was never got. But there were, no, the nurse, it's not the nurse that's in Stoer now that came with you, but the nurse that was there before her, and another woman from Stoer, came here with all kinds of food to give to the men, you see, that were looking, that were searching for the dead body, and that was giving it to the men that were lost and that were in the boat. Of course, they left the boat and came to Robin, and they got their food and shelter there. And they were there for 2 or 3 days in a house in Robin, and their friends, whoever they were from Lossiemouth and these places, came and got them home. But the remains of the dead man was never got. So these 2 women came with all the groceries and things that they thought the men would need for a bite of food. And they came in here and they said, we have, on their way up there, so they said, we have everything we need now but whiskey. But if any of them happen to faint, of the men, you see, that were long without food and got up early when they heard the news, you see, got up early in the morning, there might be some of them feeling faint, and a drop of whiskey might help them. Well, I said, you'll get whiskey from me. I have a bottle here that the cork wasn't taken out of, and you'll get the bottle as it is. And they got that. And there were 3 or 4 that had saved, you know, that were oldish men, you know, that were weak, or men that weren't very strong. It helped them.
Saved them?
Yes, saved them. So I was asked a while after that in a house I was in Cashnesy, is it really true, they said, that you give them a bottle of whiskey? Yes, I said, and that didn't give me a thought, I said, to give them a bottle of whiskey if it was of any good to them. So they were amazed to see price of whiskey wasn't like what it is today, but it was dear enough. But I never thought of it. They were as welcome to it as could be.
Was this vessel coming down from Kinlochbervie?
It was going from Kinlochbervie to Ulpel with a huge load of herring.
And what
cargo.
was it called?
Oh, I don't know the name of it now.
And roughly how many years ago would this be?
Oh, it would be 18 years now.
Before the Great War?
Oh, no, not before the war, after the Second War.
After the Second War?
Yes. Because they were young boys who are up in their 40s now. They were working there barefooted and up to their necks in water, you see, trying to get any. Well, the next day there was a gale came that night, well, a storm, and their bedding and their clothes and their nets landed in Coigach the next day. Just imagine it travelling that far in the one night.
Goodness. It's quite a distance down.
Yes, quite a distance, yes.
And where did it actually take place, the wreckage?
Well, if I was able to go up to the top of that high hill with you, I would show you the place. It's just quite near to the shore, to the rocks, because they must have slept or they wouldn't have gone on to the rocks. There was no wind or anything.
Near the lighthouse or further round?
Between the lighthouse and Doonan, halfway between the lighthouse and Doonan. They must have slept, whoever was at the helm, you see, must have fallen asleep. The poor men be out all night.
And what actually is Doonan?
It's just a croft house like this, and one of them is working with a county on the road, and the other fellow he's a joiner, he does renovates houses and things.
Is it back from the lighthouse a wee bit?
Doonan. Oh, it's just over in the corner here, you can see it from here. Yes.
So it was on this side the ship went down?
No, at the very back.
At the very back?
At the very back. Yes. But then a few years ago, say 10 or 11 years ago, we had another strange thing here. My daughter was at home, was a teacher in Venetia,